Perfect. So I'm going to begin by introducing myself. My name is Brooke Kaufman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the editor-in-chief of The Daily. I'm hosting or moderating tonight's forum, and I'm really appreciative that all of our candidates could come out this evening. We're really excited to hear from you. I'd also like to take a second to introduce our editorial board representatives. I'll have each of them say their names, pronouns, and positions at The Daily for the record.
Hi, my name is Deborah Kwan. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead the editorial board as the opinion editor.
Hi, my name is Anna Erguson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am on the editorial board as the co-arts editor.
Hello, my name is Joshua Lee. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a member of the editorial board as the other co-arts editor.
Perfect, thank you guys. And tonight we also have two representatives of the Daily's videography team and our photo editor, Emma, as well. I'll just take a second before we get into the questioning portion to describe how we're going to lay this out. I will be moderating tonight's event and using my news editor, Annie, to help time candidate responses. For the essence of keeping us on schedule, we're going to have candidates limited to 45 seconds per response. Questioning will be coming from the editorial board members themselves. I'd like to invite candidates, when your section is called, to come up to this area. You're more than welcome to use this podium, and it's kind of an awkward lean, but you've kind of got to lean really close to the mic for everyone to hear you. But if you'd like to use this podium, that would be great. For the video, we'll have the editorial board members stay there so you can just face each other, and I will kind of stand off to the side just to keep an eye on everything. But I'd like to invite Deb to introduce our first candidate, Brent, who is running for Director of Internal Policy.
Hi, Brent. You can just come up there and then get started.
Sit here.
You can use the podium if you'd like.
All right, cool. Hi, Brent. For our first question, just to get started, can you tell me more about why you're interested and why you feel like you're fit for the role of Director of Internal Policy?
Yeah, thank you. So I've been working with ASU for the past 3 years now. I started out as a student senator my freshman year, and as a sophomore, I joined the Judicial Committee as the Senate Liaison, and that's where I got first introduced to the governing documents of ASU. So I worked with the bylaws, I worked with the Constitution, I also worked with the elections, policies, procedures. So that was kind of my introduction into ASU. And then this year I've continued Student Senate, I've continued on the Judicial Committee. I was Secretary of Recommendations until I resigned for the election. And I've also been in the Asian Student Commission as a Senate intern. So I have a broad array of experiences across a variety of institutions within the ASU. And so I guess that was why I was hoping to run, because I understand the governing documents and... Sorry.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So for your next question, in your platform you mentioned the importance of connecting undergraduates to GPSS, and you specifically mentioned monthly reports and summary documents. How effective do you think these will be in creating a connection between undergrads and GPSS?
Yeah, so I guess the way I see it right now, the three big issues are there's a lack of understanding of how the GPSS works, there's a lack of understanding of what they actually do, and then there's also a problem of people in the ASU, like Student Senate, the Undergraduate Senate, don't actually know who to contact should they want to reach out and get in touch with someone in GPSS to collaborate on a bill, a joint resolution, something like that. So I feel like these monthly reports would be very effective if distributed effectively, and I'll be working with the Senate leadership to make sure they are distributed effectively. But basically they would contain information such as contact information for GPSS leadership as well as potential sponsors, and it will also discuss issues that GPSS hopes to discuss as well as the Student Senate to foster collaboration between both graduate students and undergraduate students on both sides.
That is time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So for your final question, talking about uncontested elections. So as the Daily editorial board, uncontested elections are undesirable, and you include this in your platform. How do you plan to use your position, an internally focused one, to mitigate uncontested elections and maximize voter turnout?
Yeah, so once again, as the Director of Internal Policy, I would be chairing the Judicial Committee, and one of the Judicial Committee's biggest responsibilities in fall quarter is to draft and finalize the election policies procedures. And right now, the way the EPP is laid out, Section 14 delegates the responsibilities of the EAC, the Elections Administrations Committee, But it doesn't, and that includes stuff that's important for mitigating uncontested elections, such as promoting election materials, outreach to the student body, outreach to people outside of ASUW. Right now, there's only a 7-week period within the EPP from when the EAC has to finalize its promotion materials and when the filing deadline is due. So making sure promotion for the election starts way earlier in autumn quarter, and I could do that through changing the EPP next autumn. And that's how to try and mitigate uncontested elections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For answering our questions, I'd next like to invite Kissa up to the program, or sorry, for Director of Programming up to the podium.
Hi. Okay, just to start, the same question that Brent had. So why are you interested in and why do you feel you are fit for the role of Director of Programming?
So I'm currently a sophomore, and for me, I've been in the Student Senate since freshman year, and it's just something that I'm passionate about. I got to meet amazing people through the Senate, and I think it's a really important opportunity for students to have. The only reason why I heard about ASUW was through a friend, and I really think it's important for us to raise further awareness about ASUW. I'm passionate about my position, and I think I'm qualified for it based off my past experience as a recruitment chair for PAC, and I've also interned on other positions such as Immigrants' Rights Project, where I'm able to set up events, and which I think is really important for this role.
Wonderful. Okay, for the second question, what commitments are you willing to make in order to maintain and push the Husky Pride Fund, which you mentioned in your platform, towards success?
I plan on meeting with Rsos on at least a bi-weekly or at least once a week with all the Rsos. So I plan on going with the events. I plan on committing my office hours. So once a week I'll go to meet RSO and try to see what issues that we have, since we do need to raise awareness, and that's a big platform that I'm running on. I will try to regularly find areas for collaboration throughout, and yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and final question. How do you plan to use your role as a liaison to the RSOs to support equal access to funding for diverse or historically underrepresented RSOs?
So, like it was mentioned at the Senate, I plan on working with the committee to look at previous records to see which RSOs have been historically using the funds and which have not been. The ones that have not been using it, I plan on working with them to raise awareness regarding the funds, since I believe most of them don't know it. So, for example, I can work with the GCC to find areas of collaboration. I can work with cultural RSOs to make sure they are aware of it. I'm part of PSA, and I don't believe they are. So this is something that I plan on doing by especially the weekly meetings that I'll be going to.
Wonderful. Okay. I think that's it. But thank you for answering questions.
Thank you. And next, like to ask Ben to come up to the podium, Director of Community Relations.
Start off again. Just answer, why were you interested in and why do you feel like you're fit for the role of Director of Community Relations?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I'd like to thank the Daily for giving us this platform to speak. Coming back from COVID, I feel like there's been a real push for mental health resources on campus, and one area of mental health that I feel like has been missing in the conversation is like community and social emotional health. I believe that social and emotional health really leads to academic success, and so I really only have one goal as Director of Community Relations, and that's to make sure that I foster a campus where everybody has the opportunity to feel like they're connected to a community, so that they have their that social and emotional health as well. And I've been trying to promote community through athletics and through my role as the Lettuce Eating Club Director.
We're at time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. The role of Director of Community Relations requires liaisoning to many organizations. Given that it's not realistically possible to give enough attention to every single student group that's mentioned in the bylaws, who do you plan on prioritizing if it comes to that?
If it comes to having to choose between different organizations, obviously I think our CSA and HFS have a big part of my priority, making sure that RAs continue to be a resource for students on campus because, like I said, RAs are the foot soldiers and continuing to make sure that community is built on campus, especially in our on-campus community. Also, the transfer student, there's been a bill in the Student Senate for the Transfer Student Advocacy Committee. That's something that I hope to continue to work with so that transfer students' voices are heard. There are so many different communities that I'm going to be working with, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to in this position. I've always enjoyed trying to connect as many people as possible, and I believe connecting them to each other as well will be helpful.
Thank you. In the past, many candidates have stated that they would advocate for commuter and transfer students. You also mentioned the advocacy for commuter and transfer student programming in your platform. How do you plan on building on current efforts and improving that programming?
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question. So, like you said, there's been an effort to make sure that transfer students feel like they're a part of the community here on campus. The Transfer Student Advocacy Committee is something that I really hope to move forward with. A lot of people have put in a lot of work for this, so I want to do them justice by having regular meetings and making sure that their voices are heard to me so that I'm able to confer that to the HEW board as well. So that I'm a vessel for them, but also trying to empower them to build programs for themselves as well. And building community across platforms so that transfer students are able to communicate with Greek and on campus, all that as well, to build community across the campus.
Great. Thank you so much. That's all for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to introduce Kennedy, who is running for Director of Campus Partnerships.
Hi, Kennedy.
Hi.
Same question that we've been starting everyone with. So why are you interested in it, and why do you feel like you're fit for the role of Director of Campus Partnerships?
Yes, I'm so interested and really passionate for upholding this position as I've, through my own experiences of utilizing the counseling center, I've seen where the disparities are. And also as my experience as a Black woman, I see the urgency in really curating an environment that's more equitable and inclusive for all identities. This is my first year being involved with ASUW. First, I started off as being a DJ for Ring God Radio with my show Words and Sounds that was dedicated towards creating a space for Black individuals as a safe place for them. Then I went on and was a student assistant for the HSCMSP program, which was for marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned the counseling center. So why do you feel that diversity and retention issues with UW counseling is a continuing issue, and what are your plans to advocate for it?
Yes, thank you so much. So I feel that the retention issues for the counseling center is solely part of the counselors not having the actual resources needed to best support students that are receiving counseling. And so I feel like it's vital to make sure that we have clear communications with the counselors so that we're able to meet their needs. And so having their needs met will allow the students' needs to be met and cater towards increasing the retention rates. As far as increasing the diversity aspect of hired counselors, I believe that having a greater representation of counselors that reflect the diversity of the student body will allow students of all identities to.
All right, thank you, Kennedy. One last question for you. What is your approach to working with UW-PD to reimagine safety, as stated in your platform, in relation to the perspectives and needs of the overall student body, the Black Student Union, and all other entities on campus?
Thank you. So I imagine working with AWPD by reinstating the Safety Student Advisory Board. Within that board, I picture students of marginalized communities who historically have had negative impacts due to by like police presence, and then as well as individuals from Live Well, so communicating with the peer health educators and wellness coaches, and also working with the commission directors. That I feel like having a space where we're able to clearly communicate where the lines of issues will allow us to better tend towards will allow us to better tend towards the issues.
Thank you, that's time. Thank you so much for answering those questions.
Next up, I would like to see if Adrian is in attendance tonight. If not, I'm going to move on to introduce Nathan, our candidate for Director of University Affairs.
As you can imagine, you might have guessed what this question is. Why are you interested and why do you feel like you're fit for the role of Director of University Affairs?
Thank you for that question. So I'm really interested in being Director of University Affairs because I think student voice hasn't been heard by administration for a very long time. We often talk about advocating to administration and then we don't hear back. I want to continue with follow-up efforts to work with administration and hear what they have to say to us and make sure that we get an answer from them. Additionally in that, I want to make sure that students are involved in that process. It should not be a solely ASU process for them. We should be doing outreach to students to make sure that their concerns are being heard. And to do that, I'd like to form working groups of some sort with either policy-related RSOs and other RSOs to try and build a group that we can kind of come to administration with issues for, and that can also be built out of student senate or concerns that are brought to us by GPSS. It's really just a matter of bringing students together so that our voice is heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How will you advocate for the infrastructure that will make long-term and/or permanent remote and hybrid class options possible?
Thank you. I've done a lot of thinking about that, and one of the routes I've considered is through STF, so Student Technology Fee. They're a group that could provide for such a implementation. Additionally, administration has continually made promises of expanding lecture capture technology in classrooms, and that has simply not happened. We've seen probably an addition of maybe 3 to 4 cameras this year in classrooms, and they blame it on supply chain issues, but I don't want the issue to get flushed under the rug, especially as accessibility is such a problem in the classroom this year with COVID. And COVID has really exposed issues with our university's accessibility for lecture capture, as well as accessibility on campus and the safety of students who have accessibility needs or are high risk of infection diseases like COVID or even the common flu.
Thank you. Finally, in the ASU Senate forum regarding HFS and your experience as a student worker, you stated that there are enough given resources for student workers and we want to expand them to TAs. With an increasing level of concerns arising from the student body over HFS's continued lack of support for student employees, what resources are you willing to advocate for so that all student workers are compensated fairly and have a safe outlet for sharing concerns?
Yeah, of course. So from the perspective of a student worker, one thing that we see in HFS law, I work as an RA, so residential advisor, there's unequal compensation between RAs that work in the new North and West Campus buildings versus legacy buildings. You've all seen McMahon, you've all seen Haggett, they are abysmal buildings, and those students are not compensated at the same rate that I am, and I work in a new building. So my room cost is up there, and their room cost is lower. There is no gap in that compensation. They are just tossed the same dining plan. There's nothing to fill that gap in compensation. So I really want to get a working group of students together to talk about issues on how we can advocate to HFS and other groups. And alongside that, I'd like to work with unions on campus like UAW 4121, which advocates for TAs and grad students. They also advocate for research assistants. And so by working with campus labor, we can really get work done. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you.
Before I introduce the candidates for Vice President, we're just going to take a brief 1-minute break to adjust the cameras. All right, we're going to get started again here, and I'll be introducing the first candidate in attendance tonight for Vice President. Peyton, if you'd like to come to the podium.
Hi, Peyton. Starting kind of like the same as the other ones, I'm sure you can guess. Can you tell me more about why you're interested in and why you feel like you're fit for the role of Vice President?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always known that I wanted to make a very tangible and positive impact while I was at the University of Washington. And I had the privilege of holding very comparable leadership positions in the past 4 years. So I served as the Director of Personnel for an international tutoring company prior to and during my first year at the University of Washington, where I was able to complete a lot of the same tasks as what Vice President is required to do as well. And I've also had the honor of serving as Camden President, where I'm a representative of 2,700 students on campus and 18 plus organizations and work with 4 other councils as well. So I feel like all of that experience together has really led me to wanting to pursue making ASU more accessible.
That's time, thank you. For your second question, can you describe your experience with ASU? Did you take an absence from it? And if so, how come? How will your past and or present positions inform your role as VP?
Yes, this is a little bit personal, but I became an ASU student senator in February of last year because I really wanted to get more involved on campus, and my parents actually had a divorce around the same time. So I needed to take a step back from that, and it wasn't the best time for me to be advocating on behalf of students. But now, having grown from that and been able to see like the growth that they both had in their new roles, and being able to just, reset as a student, because I think all of us can agree that you're a student first, and mental health, just as Ben was emphasizing, is incredibly important. So I needed to take a step back from that, but I'm back and better than ever, and excited to represent the student body, if given the opportunity.
Great, thank you for sharing. So for your last question, in your platform you identified internal change as imperative to increase inclusivity on campus. How do you plan to do that?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So a couple of things. The readability of the ASU bylaws, I think, is a massive barrier for students who especially want to get interested and invested on campus in student senate. So I'm hoping to make a document that would serve as kind of a liaison so that it spells out all of the information that you absolutely need to know without that readability issue. Also targeting individuals on campus who would normally be interested in ASU Senate, like commuting students, transfer students, etc., international students, and making sure that there are outlets for them so that we can get more of a diverse voice on campus. And as someone who hasn't had the privilege of being ASU affiliated as much as I wanted to be, I feel like from the outside looking in, I can really see where our strengths and weaknesses lie.
Thank you. That's time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Lillian, our next candidate for Vice President position.
Hi, folks. Hi. Okay, so same question, sorry. But why are you interested in and why do you feel you're fit for the role of Vice President?
No apologies necessary. This is a great question. So I've been involved in ASU for 3 years. I was kind of a serial intern. I've interned for 3 different commissions and board representatives. And I'm also currently the director of the Queer Student Commission, in which I represent more than a quarter of the student body through advocacy. And so being in all of these positions in ASU has really enlightened me to the fact that there are a lot of internal issues right now in ASU with accessibility to students, with accountability to students, and with transparency. So in my role as Vice President, I really want to use the super unique position I have as somebody who's been an employee for such a long time in order to better advocate for the kind of internal change that is really crucial to making sure that ASU is a functioning entity, and most importantly, that it's using your tuition dollars effectively.
All right, that's time. Okay, next question. You plan to increase transparency regarding ASU internal operations. Do you believe campus-wide emails and quarterly reports are the most effective form of this outreach? So as a student, how would you want to hear from ASU and how will you relate to the student body in a way that promotes trust and transparency among everyone?
This is such a great question. So I highlighted specifically all campus emails and internal quarterly are internal facing so that they're within my job description. A lot of the other, the great part about quarterly reports is that they allow each entity to highlight what they're doing. And the great part about all campus emails is that we can guarantee that every student gets delivered to them in their inbox. And so those are the two things that I think would really fall within my purview as the vice president. That being said, I am super passionate about supporting our employees as they do outreach to constituents. I know that I recently hosted one of the largest events in ASUW in the past several years, Queer Prom, and it was a great opportunity to be able to meet and connect with students and get them passionate about ASUW. So in addition to quarterly reports and that sort of thing, I plan on...
That's fun.
Great, thank you.
Okay, last question. Given you mentioned you wanted to increase equity in ASUW employment through specific hiring committee trainings, what do you see those hiring trainings to look like if you were to become vice president, and how does that differ from what they currently are?
This is a great question. So currently there are hiring trainings for ASUW, but in my opinion, to be honest, they aren't adequate. ASUW has a reputation that I think is earned as being kind of an inside club, where it's like once you're in ASUW, you stay within ASUW, and it's very hard for folks outside of ASUW to get involved, especially because hiring committees are made up of employees who will often go to students. And I don't think that that's the way that this should be run, right? All students should have the opportunity to get involved in ASUW. So in regards to hiring committee trainings recently, specifically, I plan on discussing the importance of not having a lot of bias in who you're hiring just because you know them. And in addition, I think that there needs to be much more advocacy surrounding letting folks of all different backgrounds apply for jobs.
Okay, thank you for answering all the questions.
Thank you. Moving on to our final position of the night, president, I'd like to ask if Naomi is in the room. Nope, then I'll move on to our second candidate for president, Timothy.
Well, this is unfortunate. I was hoping that Naomi or JT would be here.
Yeah, so are we. Hi, Timothy.
Hello.
Same question. We've been asking literally everyone. Why are you interested in the role of president, and why do you feel like you would be a good fit?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So, kind of fun fact I like to give people know about me is I worked at Dick's Drive-In for 3 years. I have the bird marks to prove it. It was a great experience, but it was very hard, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities in order to get to know like the people around me. I was working until 2:30 a.m. a lot of nights, and so those are things that I had to do to meet basic needs. And so at the same time of doing that, I was determined to find a way to serve and to get involved within UW and meet people. A lot of these people here I met because of ASUW and outside of ASUW, and so I started Student Senate. I was a senator, then I was a committee chair, I'm currently speaker, and part of the things that I've done throughout Senate was focus on issues students have brought to me, like hiring a dietitian.
Thank you, that's time.
Thank you.
So, as a presidential candidate, you represent the entire student body of UW. How would you define the roles and responsibilities of ASUW in regards to the student community and its impact on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I think for ASUW as a whole, as being the leader of that association, I think it's important to collaborate with other communities, especially on certain issues that we just don't have the capacity and the ground movement in order to understand the full complexity of the issue. So in regards like campus safety, working with the Black Student Union, working with the Black Student Commission, and other groups that are affected by the police presence, it's important to be able to come to a conclusion about how we can best advocate. And I think the biggest thing about advocating, especially in my position, is knowing when to step aside and let others have that space and that seat at the table. Especially just recognizing my own identity, it's important to be able to work with administration, but also with the overall student body.
That's time, thank you. Okay, so for your final question, back in 2020, you ran for the ASUW presidential position, but you dropped out. What have you learned since then, and how have you better prepared this time around?
Yes, I was back in freshman year. That was a very fun opportunity. It was something that I thought the best way to kind of learn whether ASUW was the right place was to really get exposed to it. And so I actually learned a ton from that opportunity, and I'm really glad I did it, and I don't regret it because I got to meet a lot of people. I got to go around and talk to a bunch of different student groups and RSOs and really know what issues are prevalent to them. And I think that's the biggest thing that right now at ASUW is lacking is community. And I think that's something that's really important to the presidential role, is recognizing how to build community and work together in order to solve common issues. And so that's something that I definitely learned is you need to rely on a lot of people and really build those connections in order to represent them, in order to work
That's
together.
fine. Thank you so much, Timothy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, just to wonder if JT is present in the room tonight. If not, that will actually conclude the Daily 2022 ACW Elections Forum. We are incredibly ahead of schedule, but I would like to thank everyone, especially our candidates, giving them a round of applause for attending this evening. Thank you guys, we really appreciate you coming out here and speaking to us and to the Daily's audience. Have a lovely evening and we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.